I can't stress it enough actually if what I'm actually saying is relevant to you, but it's important to find your baselines, so your minimum level, and it's also important to find your glass ceiling. In this episode, we're going to peek behind the internet. Welcome back.
The Little Root Lab is a homegrown, self-learning journey into IT and cybersecurity, narrated by Simon Arnold. It is being built from the ground up, documenting progression through systems, networking, and SOC concepts as it develops, including the mistakes, the learning process, and the real-world growth that comes with it. It is hoped that viewers find value in the series and are able to take something useful from the journey as it unfolds. Enjoy.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Little Root Lab. Today, the title of this podcast actually is Peeking Behind the Internet, My First Steps with Wireshark. So you've caught me on a Friday, day after the bank holiday. Hope you've had a good time off if you've been in Germany and southern Germany. I'm currently running Wireshark actually live right now, which is fantastic. Fortunately, you can't see it. Maybe we'll have to do some video at some point. Some person has requested that I do video, but at the moment I'm still sticking with audio. But before we get into peeking behind the internet a little bit, I just want to say a couple of things really about what I said in the intro. Find your baseline and find your glass ceiling. And it really does make a difference. What I mean with the baseline is when you're building a lab, take copious amounts of notes like TCP, UDP, RAW, go through DNS, go through HTTP, HTTPS, and know the numbers for each of those, the port numbers as well for those. Just get a really good overview in the area of cybersecurity, because it's not going to fail you. It's really not. And with the glass ceiling, it's where can you get up to, which is cognitively enough for you at the moment. Not enough to burn you out, but kind of like the breakthrough of the glass ceiling, if that makes sense. And that is, for me, that's threat hunting. So at the moment, when I'm doing threat hunting, it's 45 minutes, and then I'm not just tired, but I'm like, I'll start again the next day, So that's just a little point there. And the reason I say get your base layer, base level, and your glass ceiling, have a good estimation of where you are, is number one, for your own confidence, number two, for your own learning. And what's happened with that is that you actually produce your own individual container. You've got the base level stuff, which you don't need to look at your notes after a while. And then you've got your glass ceiling. It's kind of like, okay, without burnout, that is as high as I can go right now. So you contain everything. And what's happened last week, I have been considering for a couple of weeks getting back to two people. One was a cybersecurity company in April, because I looked in, that was in February that I looked at, and we had a call, and the chap didn't have a job for me, but a different department may have done. They were certainly looking for cybersecurity SOC or SOC analyst tier 1 at that time. And I got a call from this guy last week. It's actually 11 days ago. And the reason why I haven't come back to this chap, and I wrote to a human resources lady who we had an interview with, but that was for SOC tier 2, and I wasn't ready for that. I wrote back to her today, and I tried to get in contact with this other guy from the cybersecurity firm, really because, like I said, when you know your container, it's so individualized that you've got enough confidence to go back to the other people and see if they're still searching for people. So Let's go, shall we? So, peeking behind the internet, my first steps with Wireshark. So, today I spent some time exploring a tool called Wireshark on my Windows 10 machine. It's really kind of like click and go, really. It shows as a small icon when you go into the left side of the computer where everything can be found. But at first it just looked like a technical interface full of confusing labels like TCP, ARP, DNS. But as I started using it, it became clear that this tool is basically a way of seeing how my computer actually talks on a network. Before this, the internet felt just like something that worked in a way. So you open up a website and it loads and that's it. But Wireshark shows that there's a lot happening underneath that simple action. So to get Wireshark working, I had to install something called Npcap, and that's a driver that allows Windows to actually capture network traffic. So without it, Wireshark can open, but it can't see anything. No Ethernet, no Wi-Fi, nothing. And after installing Npcap and restarting the computer, restarting is vitally important. Wireshark was finally able to detect my Ethernet connection. And if you're thinking about Ethernet and you're thinking about Wi-Fi, the Ethernet connection is really super secure. Just to put that out there, really. I love my Ethernet cables, they're great. But then, I'm still running Wireshark now. This is where the real experience starts, because I'm actually looking at live traffic coming from my machine. And currently I'm seeing lots of ARP, obviously TCP. I haven't actually seen any UDP yet. And, maybe we can get into that on the next episode. So I started capturing. I immediately noticed different types of network activity appearing. So TCP traffic. So TCP is what most internet communication looks like. So browsing websites, logging in, downloading data. It's basically the reliable conversation part of the internet. And like I said, ARP, but ARP is used locally, and it helps my computer figure out where the devices are on my network. It's kind of like asking, in a way, like, who has this IP address? Do you know what I mean? Like, tell me your hardware address. So already I'm seeing a few different layers of communication. And like I said, I'm seeing I'm looking at it now, I'm seeing tons of ARP, TCP, but not really much UDP. And if you've been listening to my podcast at the start, and this is where you need to get a good base layer level of all cybersecurity terms, and that's why I've written 300 pages of notes. UDP is like shouting a signal across a field, in a way. So it's less of kind of like a secure communication network, if you get what I mean. TCP is very much more concise with the communication. And that's probably why I'm not seeing that much UDP at the moment. And I'm not sure whether you remember the first couple of episodes, but UDP is used in cases where speed matters rather than reliability. So across the field kind of scenario, like streaming, gaming, or DNS lookups. It's for that kind of thing. Then I thought to myself, okay, you've got TCP, UDP, and RAW. Okay, but that's not actually a protocol. And you'll find that on this podcast, it's me really documenting my journey for cybersecurity. I don't say that I'm expert in the field. It's just fantastic just to see what happens, as I move along, really. So Wireshark, in a sense, shows everything that, at a raw level, but it's not itself a protocol. It's more like a window into the underlying structure of all network traffic, you see. And one thing I did question is actually Wireshark a seam? And it's not, actually. So what has ARP showed me? I'm getting tons of ARP coming up at the moment. Unlike TCP, which is about communicating with servers on the internet, ARP is purely local. It helps devices on the same network find each other. Okay, so before any internet request even happens, there's often this kind of like discovery process, I guess, happening in the background, if you can get what I mean. So that made me realize that even something as simple as opening a website involves multiple layers of communication happening instantly. And when you listen, and I really do suggest you listen to it, is Late Light Linux and 2.5 admins as well. When you listen, because that's a podcast for sysops, so system ops, and they go into it so much more with websites. And you'll be surprised to find that websites are unbelievably, like, really just kind of like the coding level. They're unbelievably complicated, and being not entirely in the area of sysops. I can't explain it as well as they do. So if you need any more background information, so if you're like a T person, so you can go deep on one area, but you also have a broad area of knowledge, listen to Late Light Linux and 2.5 admins, because that is that just complements what you're doing in cybersecurity. So what is Wireshark actually? I was thinking, is it a seam? I was thinking as well, what's the difference between like Ubuntu, Plasma, Ubuntu, GNOME, a GUI, because I've gotten so used to opening up either the administrator on the PowerShell, or on Linux just opening up the terminal and just getting everything, all downloads from the internet via the command line. Like, that is my preference, rather than, oh God, I've got to go to a website and download it. But I did. That's how I did Wireshark with the Npcap today. But Wireshark is not a firewall. It's not a security system. And it's definitely not a seam. It's just a packet analyzer. A tool that shows raw network traffic in real time or from saved captures. It doesn't decide what is good or bad. It just shows you what is happening. It's, in a way, a bit like a microscope for network communication. And I kind of threw the question out there, is it then a PCAP, which is packet capture? And as far as I know, it's not that either. So, wonder what I'll be learning this afternoon. But the biggest shift for me today was realizing that the internet is just not apps and websites. It layers of communication happening constantly in the background. So you've got devices discovering each other. And I guess if I was to ask, a bit further into that, really, you're probably looking at Bluetooth, right? And if you want anything, to know about Bluetooth and everything, look up OMG or MG. I think MG's actually got his own podcasting now. Absolutely fantastic guy. He did used to, I think he worked for Mozilla. I think he did. I think he worked for, the big search engine there, really. But MG and his keyboard, OMG, fantastic. Definitely listen to that. And absolutely, just as a tip, listen to OMG on Darknet Diaries. That's a podcast, absolutely fantastic as well. Yeah, I digressed a little bit, didn't I? So you've got devices discovering each other, you've got IP addresses being resolved, you've got connections being established, and you've got data being transmitted. But Wireshark simply it doesn't simplify this really, it just reveals it. And then once you see it, you can't really unsee it. So even simple actions like opening a website now feel more like a structured process rather than a single click. So today wasn't about deep analysis or threat hunting, it was about observing, getting comfortable with seeing how my machine actually communicates, and that alone changes how I think about networks, not as something abstract, but as something constantly active, structured and visible if you know where to look. Anything else? Yeah, I can't stress it any more really, that it's not a seam, but yes, it shows you what's happening, and then the human brain can take that knowledge and, you know, work with that further. If that makes sense. So that's about as far as I'm up to with Wireshark, and looking forward to seeing what's going to come up this afternoon. The same stuff's coming up. ARP, TCP. It's exciting stuff. Got such a passion for this. I love it so much. Yeah. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you very soon.